me car, give me wife, give me children, give me this, give me that, kill my enemy, kill my enemy, kill my enemy, give me, kill my enemy, give me. Anyone that doesn't want me to succeed, die by fire, die by fire, die by fire, die by fire, die by fire. Give me this, give me that, kill my enemy, give me that, give me this, give me, die by fire, die by fire, die by fire, die by fire.
So anyway, just a little bit about myself before we get started. My name's Lamprey Milt on the internet. People know me by Nick because many people know me by my first name, but generally speaking, in the manosphere, red pill content, I go by Lamprey Milt. I've been doing this for, I guess, since late 2017. I got hooked up with a popular manosphere MGTOW content creator known as I Am Serious. He was popular about 10, 15 years ago. We started doing these shows together. He doesn't really do them as much anymore with me, so I've kind of just taken over the channel from him. He comes on from time to time. Uh, from there, talking about men and women relations, I started venturing to other topics, history, geopolitics, national politics, so on and so forth. I do these shows maybe now once a month, twice a month. I used to do them every week, but listen, and we'll get into it. There's only so much you can talk about, obviously. I'm from New
All
York.
right.
I live in New York City, originally from Long Island. That's kind of like neither here nor there. Kind of like same turd. uh, and like I said, I found you through the guy Jack Morgan. I thought you were really cool. I liked your style, your approach to things, and I figured, why not? I'll reach out to you. You seem like a really cool guy. A funny thing, I don't believe in coincidences, but this morning, my best friend shot me a text message that his wife of 17 years has filed a restraining order against him and he can't get back into his house. He's got a 10-year-old daughter. I told him, hey, listen, if you want to come crash at my place, you can. I'm letting him go through the motions, go through the process. I tried talking to him a little bit about it, but I think he's kind of in a state of shock, to say the least. And just funny how I'm going to be speaking to you tonight, and I received that text message in the morning. Steve, why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself, your channel, what brought you here, and we'll take it from there, man.
Sure. Yeah. I do think it's kind of funny that you heard about a restraining order and you immediately thought of me. No. Yeah. My story is I would say very end of December, early January this year. Actually, I actually started my channel, and it was just something that had been kind of on my head, on my heart to do for quite some time. And you heard about me. Through Jack Morgan, there was actually that particular video that was basically the horror story of the divorce that I went through uh, years and years ago. Now, this was before red pill content was even really a thing. When I was married and actually went through the divorce, nobody was talking about it. It just wasn't very, or if it was being talked about, it wasn't as nearly as widely known as it is today. So yeah, you caught on with that, and I actually got covered by tons of different people. And that was my channel was a month and a half to 2 months old. So I just remember I went to post a video or two after that, and it was about 4 or 5 days later after I had posted that main video that Jack had covered that you probably saw me on. And I turned around and looked, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's getting hundreds of thousands of views, and I'm hearing from all these different people. What in the world's going on? Okay. But as you can imagine, you pretty much hear from everybody, both sides of the fence, everybody accusing me of lying about stuff, not giving the full detail, which in the, what I think it was like 8 or 9 minutes that was on there, maybe it might have even been as short as 7 minutes. I'm like, well, of course I didn't give you all the detail. And I'm not going to, there were people that wanted to identify my ex so they could talk to her to either corroborate my story, which I'm like, okay, I divorced her. I don't think she's going to give me a fair light, no matter how we look at it. And other people that wanted to berate her and give her a hard time, and people getting very upset that they couldn't get personal details. I went through a whole period of time where people were trying to look at the videos and figure out where on earth I was even located. And I'm like, look, I'm not giving you guys personal details. I'm here to tell you my story, so hopefully you can avoid it. But yeah, the everything that was in that video, it's hard to believe. It almost sounds like it's out of a novel, but as it all went down, that's exactly how it happened. And I just came to the conclusion of, okay, here I am paying, you know, what's left of an alimony arrangement due to the laws where I live, and she was caught committing fraud outright in court. And my attorney, this is the crazy part, he warned me before we went into the courtroom. He said, here's what's going to happen. We're going to catch her. We got the private investigator, all that stuff that we got through him. And they're going to do absolutely nothing about it other than strip her of it once we catch it at a certain angle to where they have to do something about it. And I'm like, wait a minute, why are they letting it go to that point? Well, multiple different states in the United States actually, the pension funds for a lot of the judges is actually funded through a lot of the payments that come in through this stuff. So there's a lot of funding that happens. It doesn't just go to the wives. It's pretty much a whole giant racket and conflicting interests all over the place. And uh, when we caught her lying, oh my gosh! I mean, we got at least part of it stripped away, but there are guys that have had their in the years since then. I've discovered that there are so many men that have had their entire lives completely upended. Like they wouldn't even have a chance to escape and build a new life, recover. And I think once I realized, wow, this is happening all over the place, and I was on the front end of it. Well, when it was happening to me, this was not as widely known a thing. I got my education through the bad experience of it, and then I kind of got aware of like red pill content later, and that was what started to help me avoid some of the dating scenarios that I was getting into afterwards. And I was realizing, wow, I can see signs that this isn't going to work out because I'd hear something from somebody else's podcast or a YouTube video or something, and I was realizing, wow, I'm experiencing this too. This seems like a bad idea. And slowly over time, I started to kind of wean myself off of, well, really wasting time with people that I knew that it wasn't going to work out with, but I had to kind of be honest with myself and say, yeah, this isn't going to work out. So, but yeah, I got here because I just kind of felt like it was something that I felt like I was already talking to other men where I would give them advice about it. And they were like, man, you should share this. You should put this out there. And I just thought, well, I don't know if anybody would be interested in hearing it. And obviously, when I told the worst part of it, a lot of people were interested in hearing that. So, but I feel like from the feedback that I've gotten just from the emails and everybody, it seems to have helped a lot of people begin to avoid that pitfall. They don't allow themselves, if they can, to get caught in the middle of all that completely unaware. So,
So that's
yeah.
what. So you making content and putting your face on YouTube and stuff. Is it a form of like was it therapeutic for you? Did you feel like because that's the way I do. I do these shows just for myself, just to kind of put my thoughts out there. A lot of people gravitate towards it. I've never really received that much hate per se, like people trying to dox me and figure out where I am and stuff. I'm pretty open about it. I've never showed my face on YouTube just because I have no footprint on the internet whatsoever other than doing these podcasts. So even if someone were to get my name or again, if someone were to know my full name, they would not find me whatsoever, like through a Google search or anything of that sort. So I felt pretty safe as far as talking my mind, saying things aren't necessarily politically correct. For you, I'm assuming you just didn't think you would garnish so many views in such a short amount of time. Is that more or less what happened?
Yeah, I wasn't quite expecting that. I was expecting, prior to that, I was slowly building and slowly growing, and I would retain people pretty easily. Partly because I'm not quite so, say, extreme. Like I try to view things. My stance is red pill, but at the same time, try to approach it from a sense of like sanity, reason, and just logic when it comes to dealing with all this stuff, rather than like an emotional knee-jerk reaction to it. So I
Right.
try to think everything through. So I come at it a little bit of a different road. There are guys that come on there that I guess are red pill that more or less masquerade. Well, masquerade is red pill, but I would say they're more black pill. Like they absolutely don't want anybody to have anything to do with women, and they think everybody should be that way. My stance is about a 99% probably shouldn't have anything to do with women, and absolutely under no circumstances get married under the Western legal system unless you just hate life and you want it to screw you over. Then yeah, go ahead and do that. You'll definitely get that experience. But yeah, so I kind of come middle of the road with that, and yeah, I wasn't really expecting it. And similar to you, like Steve James, my name is actually Steve, but my full name is not up there. Anything that would allow anybody to directly contact me or locate me, other than the fact that they've seen my face online, not really available. So that's why a lot of people were trying to do that. When I did follow up videos to the one that you saw, and you probably are aware of those too, where I just kind of gave more detail, tried to fill people in on what the experience is like, and kind of drop a little bit of my thoughts, right or wrong, be that as it may, as to how I
Well, you're
feel about a lot of
human.
it.
You're
Yeah.
human. You can't take everything. You can't say everything you say with the as scripture, so to speak. There's going to
Oh
be
yeah.
times where you make a mistake or you left some critical piece of information out. And also, just for the sake of your own privacy and sanity, the last thing you want to do is really put your full fledged all the information out on again where you live and more details about your intimate relationship and such.
Oh yeah. Yeah, definitely. Well, just because there's always going to be somebody out there that cannot handle having access to that type of information, and you have to assume that's such. Just just being reasonable and honest about that. You just have to assume as such. But that's all good. And generally, I would say I've gotten a fairly positive response, but there have been people that have been haters. I've had people a couple of different times. I think YouTube flagged the comments, and one or two people that have contacted me that have been absolutely uncharacteristically even irate and just threatening to the point where I'm like, really, I'm over the internet. Take your best swing, okay? Come on. But yeah, it does tend to bring up a just an emotional knee jerk reaction when you talk about a lot of these subjects. Everything from the way dating and marriage has now shifted to where society has shifted, what the opportunities are for people just trying to live their life and kind of like have the best version of it. Because I tell you, every single day, I'm not just hearing about situations like your friend where he got the restraining order, but just guys getting completely blindsided by uh, a wife who may have even been conservative up until recently. They were you know seemed like they were happily involved in a marriage, seemed like they were happy with the kids, and at some point along the way, they get involved in either social media or get exposed to something where it starts to build up this false perception in their mind, where they begin to think, oh, well, there's all these other people out there that I could potentially be involved in because a lot of guys like pics that I put up on, with all the social media validation that you can get nowadays as a woman. And so they start to get this false sense of it. And then the next thing you know, I end up hearing that, oh, they're going through a divorce because they think there's something better out there. Now, that's not really on the surface. They're not like saying that, but it's fairly obvious when they begin to describe to me what's going on. I'm like, yeah, that's what's happening. And they're like, well, what can I do to save it? And the sad, hard truth of that you're probably aware of just as much as I am, is that when they start going down that road, the only thing that's going to teach them is the hard experience of finding out what it's like on the other end. Very rarely does anybody, well, when I say very rarely, I can't hardly name any situation where the woman pulled back from that and said, wait a minute, this seems like this isn't going down a good path. This seems like it's going to land me in a place where I don't want to be. I can't name any times off the top of my head where they actually reverse course. So I have to tell the guy, look, you're pretty much screwed and this isn't going to work out. You need to get out while you can, probably on your terms as much as you can. And if you're already legally married to her, there's not going to be much about your terms that you're going to get out of that. And that's a hard thing to tell somebody. But I'm like, look, I've been through it myself. I can tell you that there is life on the other side of it. You can reclaim it. You can build your own life the way you want to. And there is an escape. And yeah, she's going to pay a price down the road, but you can't have that be on your mind. You can't have the revenge of that on your mind. Just know that it is coming. And so there's, to some guys, they're almost looking for that vengeful consolation. And I'm like, yeah, you'll get to a point where you even get past that, where you just don't even care. Like the ex from the first marriage, there's been times where she's attempted in the past to re-enter my life, like, try to hit me up. And it's just total ghost mode. I have zero interest whatsoever in even exchanging anything with her at all. And generally speaking, she's just blocked everywhere, but she inevitably finds a way through to try to find some way to send me something, although it's been quite a while for now, and I hope I didn't just jinx it. But
Well, let's rewind. All right. So,
yeah.
so I'm assuming you're married more than once.
Yes, I did get married a second time. Very, very short-lived. Um, yeah, and well, to clarify, I did file for divorce both times, so I made my own exit. The second time was not a brutal divorce. It was not a brutal divorce. There was a problem with I was still. This was obviously still back a ways, so I've been quite a few years out from all of this for quite a period of time now. So a little bit of clarity comes with that, learning from other people's experiences. But yeah, I went through a divorce with that where she had actually had a son from a previous relationship. And at the time when I had gotten involved, there was no real serious warning signs. And this sort of stuff, the trouble with it is it can sneak up on you like a chameleon. Now, post that, attempting to live with a single mom that has, get married and have a child under your roof that could potentially be a problem. You learn from that, but uh, yeah, he had real issues, and that caused a divide between her and I. And I ultimately exited and left. And I did not get screwed over financially. I was actually much more prepared the second time around, and made sure that that didn't go quite the way that it did. And then also, in all fairness, she didn't try to do that to me. She was actually fairly straightforward and honest about it, and didn't try to do that. I don't announce that part too much publicly because a lot of the guys that are red pill, they still suffer from the red pill rage. They're like, no, no, you don't understand. You must have misread that somehow. And I'm like, you don't understand, buddy. I'm not saying that all of the women are doing that. In fact, I know a lot of them are kind of in this con artist game where they are seeing how they can best use the system to screw you over. And that just didn't happen this time. But yeah, there was a second time that I was married, but yeah, yeah, go ahead.
All right. So,
Any other
like, all
thoughts
right.
about it?
So uh, your first marriage, did you went into it kind of air quote, blue pilled, like you didn't really, you think, all right, she's with me. We're gonna, get a house, build a nest egg, plan for a future, have kids, so on and so forth. Or did you have like, were you kind of aware of kind of the pitfalls of modern marriage, or that was kind of like, no, she's not going to do that. It's not her. It's like this is different, so on and so forth.
I was completely unaware, to be honest.
Well, can I ask how
I
old
had,
you are at that time?
oh yeah, early 20s,
Okay.
early 20s. And no, I had no idea. I had no idea because I'm in my mid 40s now, and uh, well, mid to late 40s, actually, honestly. And back then, people in my family hadn't gotten divorced. I was not really aware that I had been raised in church. I had been around people that, generally speaking, had fairly stable marriages. And then I just was not aware of any of that. People getting into things like going onto the internet, getting involved in online chat rooms, uh, getting attention, getting that validation.
Right. So this is like
That
20
was the
years.
thing.
This is like 20 years ago with AOL
Oh
chat
yeah, yeah.
rooms. All right. Okay. So this is
Oh yeah,
pre-text
yeah.
messaging, pre-Instagram. This is like the infant stages of the internet where the pictures are more pixelated, we go potato vision. So this is like, they're finally getting out there, and women are, getting on Facebook, MySpace, getting
Hmm.
getting messages from randos and such.
Yeah, I was working. I actually had a business, and I was working pretty hard most of the time. And we had children together, and I was not aware that this was nobody really kind of seemed to know that this was a burgeoning problem at the time. I mean,
Right.
when I found out that, which was ultimately how a lot of this started, she started getting attention from guys online, and stuff started to happen from there. And nobody identified that really as a problem. And I remember the first time I really became aware of it was not just because of suspicious stuff happening with her. It was stuff that was happening with other people that I knew of, like somebody else that I knew of, just more of an acquaintance through work. His wife had left him for somebody that she met online, and I was like, "What? Wait a minute. Wait, that's a thing?
That's a thing,
That
right?
happens? Yeah, yeah." I'm like, "You leave somebody for some person you met online with? That sounds kind of risky." And then it kind of began to put that kernel into my thinking of, okay, this is something that can happen. So, are you still able to hear me?
Yeah, yeah, you're good.
Okay. Um, but yeah, I began to realize that this was a possibility and this could be a real problem. And I started to notice a lot of, just issues where there was stuff being hidden and chats that she was having in, I guess, certain different types of a Yahoo Messenger. He was doing some chatting in and other stuff. And I was really beginning to realize, okay, anything romantic between the two of us was kind of just going away. There didn't seem to be anything I could do about it. She was obviously getting attention from other people. And one thing eventually led to another to where it just snowballed. And I realized at one point, at one particularly dark moment where I discovered a chat between her and a guy where the guy was joking about something bad happening to me and him and her ending up together. Now, to her credit, she didn't take the bait on that, but the very fact that that conversation even happened woke me up to the reality that I'm in trouble. I'm in real trouble. This whole thing is a giant mess. And what am I doing? And this person is looking for an exit. The person I'm married to is looking for an exit and clearly doesn't value what she has with me. And, like you had said before, you're kind of coming into it. I was coming into it young and just with these impressions of marriage and what married life and everything would be like from previous generations that seemed like they were fairly happy and successful. And maybe to some degree they were, but they didn't have
Well,
some of
you
these
were also
pitfalls that we now
content.
have.
The other thing is
Yeah.
you're probably just generally content with your life. You're okay with her. You're okay with your job. You're happy with the way your life was progressing. Little did you know that this was brewing in the background. Now, did she continue talking to this guy, or did you kind of put it out there saying, "I saw this message," or did you want to see you kind of set the bait and see? Wanted to see where this conversation was going to lead to.
It turned out that I was completely really not computer literate. The way business was run, you really didn't have to be, but so much. You just had to be somebody that knew how to make deals and handle things. And so throughout the course of this, I became computer literate and I began to realize, okay, she's got, there were certain like sites that you could go to where you could do like online games and stuff. And it was almost like a social media type of site there. You could engage and talk with people and get involved with people. So there was stuff like that going on. There was multiple different types of chats that you could do, people you could connect with. And I eventually found out that through the because we actually at one point still had landline at the house that I was in, and she had used the landline to contact the guy, and I ended up finding it in a phone bill, and I confronted her about that. Well, eventually the connection kept happening because one of these guys helped provide her with a cell phone, and she was borrowing money from a relative of hers to help fund all of this. Now, as all of this is going on and it's kind of unwinding, I'm realizing that I'm in real trouble and I need to find some sort of a way out of this because she's looking to replace me. So it's either going to happen on her terms or I'm going to make my exit. And that just kind of became clear one day. I remember actually the morning that I woke up and that thought solidified in my brain. And I was like, this is where it's going. This is what's happening. So yeah, eventually I just it was somewhat of a surprise to her, but I was completely okay with it because I was like, it's not like she gave me any warning. So yeah, I ended up leaving and ultimately, I didn't. I was foolish and naive enough to think that I was going to get a fair shake from the courts, and that's obviously where I my other video comes in, where I describe what all that process was like. And yeah, it's pretty nuts. I mean, even to this day, I've come across multiple different people that have contacted me that I knew over the years that knew her and I that have said, "Oh, hey, your ex from way back when, yeah, is she single again? She was on a dating site," and I'm like, "No, she's not. She actually married some other idiot, and she's now on dating sites behind his back." And I'm just like, "Oh, geez." And they're like, and I usually I'm like, "Look, I don't even want to hear about it," because they're like, "Oh, well, did you know this?" I'm like, "Dude, I don't even want the details. I don't care. I just don't care." And I mean, it's like it's not even. I'm so emotionally detached from it at this point that you just don't really think about it anymore. Like it doesn't, other than telling the story to other people to help warn them that this is a real problem out there, that you don't want to put your fate in the courts, you don't want to trust it. And there was many times that I was in courtrooms with my attorney and we were waiting for some simple part of the process to be heard or approved by the court or by the judge. And I was watching prenups get thrown out.
Yep.
And I remember talking to my attorney, and I'm like, "Does this happen a lot?" And he goes, "Yeah, prenups are pretty much a joke." And I'm like, "Oh, geez." And then other attorneys and people that I met through this, I got quite the education on it just by seeing everything that was playing out. Pretty much every attorney that I spoke to, and it didn't matter if it was a man or a woman, all of them were collectively saying, if you're a guy and you get married into the system, you're a fool. You just basically you don't want to be successful in the future because you're gonna be in a bad place. You're probably gonna get screwed. And they all kept saying that. And I was taking note of that. I was like, what's the likelihood that this can't be true? Can't be true if everybody's telling me the same story. So and I think I'm trying to remember. I think when Jack Morgan covered it, I think his girlfriend was on there, and I only got to see part of it. I think she was kind of questioning some of that and
Yep.
not realizing, And I'm like, that's fine, but I mean, I'm absolutely certain, and I heard it from the men and the women, all the attorneys that work on this. They know that it is a loaded deck. They know that it is not a good idea.
So
So,
how many years were you married the first time?
about 12.
Okay. So you ever heard, I'm sure you've heard of the 7 year itch.
Oh yeah, yeah,
So do you think
yeah.
that theory coincides with your first marriage?
Actually, I would say probably not the 7 year itch. I would say it was a perfect storm of circumstances and availability through online stuff where you could go back and connect with other people. So it kind of opened that door. And um, my personal thought on the 7 year itch is I feel like it's down to about a 2 day itch now. Like it's people basically go into the relationship already with the itch these days. Is
Yes.
almost how it seems to me. Like every story I hear, they're coming into a situation, and I mean, this is actually something I'm going to be commenting on coming up. A New York Times article that got released, where a woman who's writing it, the author of this particular article, is wondering where all the men have gone and why they've abandoned the dating pool, and just basically saying, "Please come back, please come back." And the funny thing about the article is that she's saying it from her point of view, doesn't bother to speak to any men, draws her own conclusions that are erroneous. Not a big shock, because how can you really do that if you don't actually ask the people who are exiting why exactly they're doing it? So she has her own emotional, very misguided take on it. And I'm sitting there thinking, well, men are exiting all over the place because, well, first of all, like the marriage situation, they're incentivized to break that contract out the gate now, pretty much. So they're only doing it in many, many cases because it's a con that they're being led into by other people that are encouraging it online, or family members or people that are encountering. So you're going to get screwed over that way. Financially, it's probably not going to go well for you. It's very likely your children, if you have any, are going to be alienated from you. So none of that's good. And a lot of men are now waking up and seeing it and stepping away. It's becoming something to where article after article, news story, acknowledge, things on social media are now starting to acknowledge men are walking away in droves. But it isn't even just that, it's the relationships too. They're taking a look at the relationship and realizing, okay, the women are coming into this, they're chatting up a bunch of other guys on the back end, basically running around single, but for certain stakes and purposes, acting like that they are in a committed relationship with you. But the reality is, at no point were you really ever in a committed relationship with them. They just continue to act like they were single the whole time. Guys are noticing that too. They're like, okay, this, what is the point of this? I don't want to put my time, my money, my effort into something where it's pretty much guaranteed that she's running around doing all that. And I'm sure you've seen with the feminism, the way that they're promoting it as empowering. If you are incredibly dishonest, a con artist, and running around and cheating, that's some form of empowerment. And so, uh, a lot of guys are noticing this and they're realizing, as the old saying goes, the juice isn't worth the squeeze. So they're just exiting completely all over the place. And I constantly hear from people that are doing that. And the funny thing is, I'm now starting to see comments from and hear from more women that are looking at all of this and they're kind of getting this sense of, I feel like feminism screwed us over. We're now in this place where there's so many women running around doing this that all the dudes, all the guys are jaded. Half the women, well, most of the women are running around engaging in hookup culture, and nobody's winning at all. We're all getting screwed over. Even the women that were promised everything by feminism, they're not ending up empowered. They're ending up screwed over too. So there's a small, like, fringe of women that are starting to notice that. At least that's what it seems like with the ones that I'm hearing from. I don't know how big that is, but I do know men are just sick of it. They realize it is a bad deal all the way around, and they don't understand. I guess I know I've heard the dichotomy of logic versus like emotion when it comes to men and women, but they don't understand that we're approaching it entirely strictly from a logical point of view, that it's just a bad deal that is not worth it to us. I mean, I don't need commitment from somebody that's not really committed to me. So you're basically offering the same thing back. Their lack of commitment now mirrors your lack of commitment. And before long, you begin to realize that's not worth my time. So you walk. And oh, geez, I hear that from guys a lot who have been through situations like your friend with a restraining order, which usually there's always a whole lot more to that story. Like there's other stuff going on.
Of
Um,
course, of course. I'm sure.
oh
Again, it's
yeah, yeah.
happening. This is fresh off the presses, so it's happening in real time. So I will eventually get the full-fledged truth of it, and I'm not going to say the background to it on this show, but there is more of a background to what has transpired. So I haven't really discussed the relationship I was just in on my show all that much, other than it ended. And uh, funny thing is, so I remained single for about 8 years. Well, no. I take that back. 6 years prior to my last uncommitted, committed relationship, as I like to call it. And it's interesting because it seems that women go into a relationship now wondering when is it going to end, and that's alien to me. If I'm going into a relationship to be monogamous, not talk to other women, kind of delete the dating apps and such, I'm sticking with you. Like I'm committed to you, and we're gonna, you know, uh, walk through the paths of life together and figuring out, the good, the bad, the
Right.
ugly, and get to know each other. The last relationship I was in, she already went into it wondering when it was going to end, and I'm like, well, why are you going into this relationship with me wondering when is it going to end? Well, it's just a chapter of my life, and people grow old of each
Oh
other and
wow.
stuff. So I'm like, whoa, that's not what this is about. Now, if you want to take that approach, then this is not a committed relationship, and I'm going to talk to other women. And if I go and fuck around or do something else, I will be transparent with you. If you want to have like this open relationship where you're not necessarily committed to me, she didn't want any of that. She wanted to have her cake and eat it too. And that's something that I've noticed
Oh
with
yeah.
women, I'm a little bit younger than you, but generally speaking, women under the age of 40, they want to keep all options open and not necessarily uh, listen to you, more or less. And
Right.
throughout my relationship, and I see this with other relationships amongst men that are in their 30s and 20s, is that women go through this self-discovery mode while in the relationship with you, and I realized this is what I want. No, you're not checking all the boxes, so they're constantly looking for a problem about you to leave you, even though there's not necessarily anything wrong with you. And whenever there's some type of snag or a problem or a disagreement, they tend to split and shut down and kind of write you off as, another check, another notch under the belt, so to speak.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, I
Again,
know
yeah,
exactly
go
what
on.
you mean.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, that's seems to be the story across the board. Is um, I want commitment, but I don't want to give any. I
correct.
want a double standard, but I don't want you to. It's oppressive if you tell me what I'm allowed to do or not allowed to do, and you're approaching it the way probably the best way anybody can. Like if I were to get told, hey, this is what I want. I want basically an open. I would respond the way you did. I would be like, hey, cool. That's absolutely fine. If we're not accountable to each other, then it goes both ways. And oh yeah, that stirs it up big time. And the other thing I discovered too is that when you do that with women that are particularly attractive, that are not used to being told no, it brings out a whole new level of crazy that I slowly began to realize, yeah, I got to be really careful about that. I did a video about that where I discussed one of the ones that she was like making fake accounts, attacking me, doing the whole reputation destruction thing. I hadn't done anything wrong to her except tell her no, which means I didn't really do anything wrong to her. She just didn't like the fact that she wasn't the one that broke it off, that I did. And I tried to let it down easy, but you know how that goes. But yeah, a lot of guys are going through the same thing you are, where they're just get into a relationship and the woman's like, okay, well, I would like to have this double standard here. You better not ever speak to any other woman. I don't want to feel emotionally threatened by anything, but I'm
Right.
going to cross lines all over the place. And I'm like, yeah, good luck with that. That's a deal that realistically, I don't think it's that women think of it so much emotionally. I think that there's a double standard there that they're just trying to avoid admitting is there to some degree. They see other women do it and they're trying to do the same thing. They know it's a bad deal. It's a bad deal that they would never accept themselves, but they want to trick you into buying into it or accepting it when they know that they would never go for that. No sane person would go for that. That's basically like signing up saying, yes, please screw me over. I'd like to have that happen to me in this life. Yeah, no one's going to go for that uh, when it's openly declared. So they try to slip it in under the radar and get the most out of it that they can. And they don't like it when that's done back to them. So it's sort of strange. And the weird thing is too the attraction level that increases. I've noticed when you get really honest with them about it, and then they start to get really attracted, and you're more turned off than ever at that point. You're like, yeah, well, okay. Um, you clearly want to cross lines and do all this stuff, and I clearly can't trust you, and now you want it even more. Okay, have
Well, I think
fun.
most guys adopt a bend don't break mentality. And that I'm speaking of myself, where you kind of, all right, these are the lines that cannot be crossed, right? But it seems they're constantly look. The problem is it women don't realize how much guys have to deal with in just day to day drudgery. You're dealing with so many external factors. Again, social media. You're talking about New York Times articles. You can paint the brush to any of these type of People
Oh yeah.
magazine and stuff, and there's all these externalities looking to undermine the relationship, right?
Oh yeah.
What if your boyfriend's a narcissist? Well, 10 signs that your boyfriend's cheating on you. So women are seeing these news articles in their feeds, and they're constantly clicking them, which kind of becomes like an echo chamber where they're constantly challenge you, questioning you. I recently, the new one is where if you state some type of factoid that you knew, that you read about from a long time ago, and they want to fact check you, and they run it through a Google search, and they click on the first article. You see, you're wrong. That's not true. Look at this article that I just pulled up. So these shortcuts to information where they're constantly challenge your authenticity or what evidence you're trying to present to, you know, counter whatever they're trying to say, whether it's in politics or, and it tends to be politics, but either economics and things like that. So whatever a guy says is constantly being challenged by these external threats. And I usually make a point that is like, listen, I care about you. We're in this together. We're intimate with one another. Why can't you just trust what I'm saying instead of you constantly trying to undermine it, trying to find a chink in the armor and what it is I'm trying to convey?
Oh yeah, yeah. It's that's that whole combative nature too that kind of comes with that they're building up in women. I've noticed, and I that's the it's weird that they even get to a point with that. I think too, just to kind of continue on your path there, that they start to treat it like that's some form of a flex. Like
Yeah.
now I'm difficult to deal with. I'm combative. That's some form of a flex now, and I'm just explaining to them and saying, okay, well, first of all, and this is in the context of a relationship, romantic relationship. You're dealing with that, and you're trying to convey to them, like you're saying, why don't you trust me? Why don't you want to work on building on the trust rather than ending up in yet another battle? Because as you said, we're dealing with all the crap that we deal with out there. The last thing we want to do is come home to a fight with the
A
person
hundred
that's
percent.
supposed
Like,
to
right, I'm
be.
already battling the demons in the day. You ask me how your day's going. I'm like, I don't really want to talk about my day. Work is work. The last thing I want to do is talk about work. Let's just be together. But then now you're at an you're at an impasse. Now you're being challenged on the home front about certain stuff, and that's the last thing a guy wants. Hence, why so many men are just walking away from
Oh
dating
yeah.
altogether.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I've been in that situation a couple of times where they started to get challenging and combative, and I began to realize, okay, there's limitations to this relationship. They are not on board with me in a number of different areas. And as you grow too, like as you grow and I grow, we begin to see these signs, and we begin to realize just using our powers of reason, we understand, okay, we now know where this is likely to end up. They're either going to get extremely combative, more so and more so and more so, to where it's damaging your personal peace and you're coming home to something where it's a war zone, not worth keeping around. So you start cutting that off earlier and earlier, or you realize that they're doing things that might undermine you in your life. A lot of the times they're feeling threatened by stuff. Like I do a lot of independent film work where we've done everything from fan films to all sorts of different stuff. And there's been a few instances in the past where I dated people where uh, they would project problems or cheating or other stuff that they'd encountered in the past onto a situation that I'm involved in. And I'm like, yeah,
Yep.
I keep a clean slate with this stuff because I know if you mess around with people on set, or if you're not careful and you play fast and loose, you're going to get in real trouble. And I said, I don't do that because I've already seen and learned from other people. I learned by watching other people get bit by the snake that I don't need to get bit by the snake to find out that that's a dumb idea. So I changed and altered the way I handle stuff with my professional relationships when it comes to that. I just keep a boundary there that I don't cross. And a lot of the times people will bring in their baggage from the past, other things, other bad situations, or even they project onto you things that they used to do. Like I remember the first time somebody that I'm fairly certain she was talking to and involved with other people, and it was very short lived. And I'm fairly certain she was doing that, but she was always concerned that I was cheating. I mean, to the point to where there was no reason behind it. Like it wasn't, you know, the type of thing where you're like, where did that come from? That's out of left field. Why do you keep saying that? Oh, guilty conscience. It's you. And
Right.
yeah,
If the person's accusing you of cheating, that means they're the ones, in fact, cheating.
yeah. I mean, like, and outside of reason too. Like, if you had huge chunks, missing blocks of time, stuff that just didn't make any sense, where you couldn't just logically articulate in like a sentence or two, hey, here's what I was doing, here's what I was up to, and you're fairly just straightforward and accountable. You're not jerking people around. A lot of times people can tell that, but yeah, beyond that, where it starts to get to the point where it's like, okay, where is that coming from? why do you think this about this person? And then you start to realize, oh, you're the one with missing blocks of time, and now you feel guilty. You feel worried that you're going to get played and beaten at your own game, which I'm not even trying to play, ironically. So, yeah, that's, I mean, oh man, there's so many things, but I mean, my personal stance, even on relationships now, is transparency, accountability. Everything's got to be upfront, and everything has to be set up in a way to where if something comes to the surface that in any way involves any type of cheating, no negotiating, you're out the door. I don't negotiate with that at all because if somebody does that, there's no way that's going to work out
Right.
well.
Of
It's just, I mean,
course.
there's not a possibility where that is. And there's so many guys out there that I think they get desperate to the point where they're thinking, oh, but there's a way. And if I just talk and communicate, and I'm like, yeah, you've already got a bad apple. Well, what do you think you're going to do? Skin it until you get down to a point where now you find the core's rotten too? I mean, you're
Well, it
not going
becomes
to
a sunk
fix that.
it becomes a sunk cost fallacy. So if you spent,
Oh, yeah.
a year to 2 years with someone, you went in with this under the notion on where this is going to lead, and it's turning out to not go in the direction you want to go in. You try to fight to keep that. You don't want to be wrong, and
Hmm.
again, that goes back to what I just said: this the sunk cost fallacy, where all right, you're 2 years deep into it, 3 years, whatever amount of time, and you don't want to admit that you were wrong early on in the relationship. And for me, you kind of ignore the red flags early on, the first 2 or 3 months, and in hindsight you realize, wow, this was a really bad idea. But usually the woman encourages you, no, you're wrong, this is going to work out, blah blah blah, and then lo and behold, later on in the relationship, your inclinations early on turn out to be quite true.
Oh, yeah.
You
That's
know,
a
I
hard thing. The self being completely honest with oneself. That's one of the, I would say that's one of the toughest things out there for any guy when it comes to just being accountable to yourself. Like you already know, we all often already know when a situation is bad. Like you were saying, you're realizing at the beginning, there's certain things that are just not going to be compatible with you for a long-term relationship because it's just not going to work. I mean, it's going to be a situation where the trust is broken, where you just realize that there's not really anything that you're going to build on that's going to get past certain revelations that you've already experienced with this person. And then you have to be honest enough with yourself about it that you've already come to the realization and the truth of where this is going to go and then do something about it. And that is oftentimes the hardest part is just accepting that people disqualify themselves from your life. That's hard. I mean, that's an easy thing to say, but for most men, for myself included, that's a hard one to come by when it comes to actually learning it, letting it sink in. And when somebody disqualifies themselves, let them. Let them. Don't save them.
what I've come, especially last few months, going on dates and such. Um, it's hard to start dating with the feeling that the person is not in it for the long haul. And knowing that as a guy, it's really hard to be emotionally invested in someone with that feeling as if, well, there's so many things that are working against me. It's hard for me to be emotionally committed. Um, Getting to know the ins and outs of that person, so on and so forth, that for the most part of my life, I've kept most of my relationships with women on a superficial level, knowing that, listen, this woman can, ruin my life. God forbid I get married, so on and so forth. Like, I cannot put all my eggs into one basket as men have done in the past, thinking that this person is going to be there through thick and thin, through sickness and health. Like that's kind of like where I'm coming from now. It's like, okay, I'm seeing this person, I'm dating, getting to know this person, her family, what she likes or dislikes, tastes or proclivities. Um, how far deep into this am I going to get without getting burned? And I think a lot of guys now are feeling that or knowing this when going into a relationship with that type of, again, that feeling like, okay, I'm emotionally invested in you to a point where I'm not going to be heartbroken. I don't know
Right.
if you can build upon that, but I think that's kind of where we're at. Where you're talking about a New York Times article, where have all the good men gone? It's because most men don't want to emotionally invest in a belligerent creature.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, there's so many factors to that. Well, one of them is like you're saying, like the initial stages, wanting to emotionally invest, wanting to do all that, and there's the I would say that there's almost an anxiety that builds up that you know that even if let's just say that you find a diamond in the rough, somebody that things are working out well with, what if something crops up from their past? What if they come across something or get exposed to something on social media that
Right.
starts to shift stuff? At any given point, any given day, you're now dealing with basically some a relationship, as you were kind of alluding to before, that's under constant attack from all these sources and places out there that are just feeding this type of information that want to destroy the monogamy, destroy the trust, acting like that's a good thing, trying to get that idea, especially into women's heads. They are targeting that. I've noticed that they target women like that to try to bring out the worst that they possibly can. I think it's a very, very coordinated campaign, in my opinion, but it just adds to that. So you know every single day that there's a little bit of anxiety of like even as I date now, I know that there could be a day where I'm dating somebody and I wake up and they, something is now shifted with them. You feel it when you're talking to them. You realize something else is now going on and something basically got to them. Maybe they were okay for a while and then something gets to them.
Or
Or maybe they
it's an
weren't.
alien voice that just appeared out of nowhere.
Yeah. Well, it's
It's
or like like you're an astronomer and you realize, okay, there's the presence of some sort of gravity affecting this. They're just making sure I can't see what it is, but you know that it's out there because you can feel it affecting the relationship. And I mean, I think I've gotten to a point now where I start to ask questions about that, and I say, okay, here's the deal. If you got missing blocks of time, we're going to straighten that out or you're gone. Because somebody who is on the level with you and isn't playing a game with you, they're not mysteriously vanishing. You're not a freaking superhero. Get back here and explain what's going on. And if you don't have a really good explanation right out the gate, I'm not going to deal with this because we're adults here. You're not a child. I'm not a child. You're going to act like an adult and we're going to straighten it out. If we can't do that, well, you're wasting my time. I'm wasting yours. Let's just move on. Let's just be adults about it. I found that that tends to work pretty well. As I said, there are some women that they still get pretty upset because they don't like getting called out on it when that happens. But so there's that, and then there's the if they ever look like they're nervous about their phone. I'm not going to tiptoe around it. I'm just going to look right at them and I say, "You see something on there you like? Is there a problem here? Just lay it out there for me." I said, "If you're scared about that at all," and I've actually done this on a couple of occasions where I said, "All right, hand me your phone," because they were like acting very strange and acting like they wanted to get on the phone. Now, it had actually nothing to do with the fact of wanting to actually see what was on their phone. When they froze, I knew. When they froze, I knew. I was like, "Oh, okay. My question's been answered. Have a nice day and a nice life. Get out. I'm not going to get upset about this." And so, but that is a hard stance to take because then your emotions are always on the edge of basically kind of getting rocked to some degree. Like, however committed you are, you might be 4 or 5 years into something, and then this starts to happen, or it was slowly happening, and you start to find that there was a red pill guy actually years ago that was pretty hard, pretty much insistent that you could basically vet anybody to the point where this wouldn't happen to you, but he ended up finding out that his girlfriend was cheating on him with a side phone that he didn't know about and a side bank account that he didn't know about and some fool of a guy that was involved with her and all of that. And, she basically ends up with neither one of the guys. Nobody wants her in the end because they know that, her word isn't worth anything. So, but yeah, he ended up learning the hard way that this can really, really creep up on you. And it doesn't have to be something that's seen at the beginning. You're kind of under fire through the whole relationship. It's a hard place to be. I think a lot of guys are kind of feeling that anxiety, and it makes them think, it's just better to not have to wonder what's over my head and under my feet and all the stuff that's hidden. I don't want to wonder about it.
right.
And I totally get that. I totally get that because it's the stuff you don't see more often than not that ever kills that relationship. You never see it coming.
This kind of ties into one of your latest uploads about the red pill, and then it kind of leads to nothingness, and you become somewhat living in a straitjacket where you're apprehensive about getting into a relationship, and that once you go through self discovery, learning about the manosphere. And women's nature in the West, that you have apprehensions about everything and anything. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that upload, and we can build upon that.
Oh, sure, yeah. And just a heads up, I have unfortunately, just about 10 minutes left, and then I have to get on another call.
Yeah, no problems, man.
If that's cool with you. Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
As far as that goes, yeah, that's something that I went through where I don't know if I call it an existential crisis of any sort with that, but it's a point where you begin to realize that the veneer of distraction gets lifted. That's one major part of it. Like, so a lot of the times when we're dating or in a relationship or we're involved in a lot of the activities that we're doing in life, there was a whole veneer as sort of the harsh truth of realizing all this and the harsh truth of everything with the red pill. There's a veneer of distraction that just gets lifted. And for a bit of time there's a lot of clarity. There's a whole lot of clarity that comes in, and it seems almost kind of amazing. And then after that, it starts to feel empty because then you're like, what do I do? Do I even get into a relationship? Do I even want to do it? What do I want to do with my time? How do I want to spend it? Part of that is what led to me actually even starting the channel that I started, and some of it is just coming to terms with what you're going to accept, what you're not going to accept, and there's some real emotional kind of changes that come with it too. Is the best way I can describe it. It's you shift into this mode where you almost seem cutthroat to some of the people around you because you're willing to slash stuff left and right. You don't care if you look at something and you already recognize the signs where you know it's going to upend your personal peace in life. It's going to make things harder. You're going to be spending days or nights wondering what's going on with a certain individual or a certain situation. You're just like, you know what? That is absolutely not where I want to be, and I want that gone. And it almost gets cold at the same time. It's extremely truthful. But yeah, there's a darkness there. There's a darkness that kind of comes with that too, because you feel a bit disillusioned. You feel like, well, what's the point of anything?
Right.
And that's a hard thing to come out of. And I went through that. I mean, there are points where that still kind of comes back. And at that point, you have to find depth and meaning, maybe even I hate to say the word religious because I've never liked the word religious. It smacks of like, you know, in my opinion, kind of like being very religiously minded and church minded in the
You're
sense
rigid.
that you don't really.
You're rigid. You're rigid.
Yeah, yeah, and you're not. I like to think of it along the terms of, in my personal belief as a Christian, I feel like there's a lot. I don't really subscribe to a lot of certain rigidness in certain churches, and when I say that, I mean like everything from the dress codes to the judgmental attitude to a lot of different things. At the same time, I do subscribe to a lot of the morality, the truth, the stability that comes from it, and it's not because I think of that way in this life. I think this world is just a fallen mess of a world. I just do. I think that it's clearly demonstrated by everything that we see and experience that it is a fallen mess, and that this world is probably going to have its fair share of problems no matter what we do. I mean, like, no matter how good you are, you're going to run into trouble, even if you do everything right. I mean, let's say you're a Christian, you believe that Jesus is perfect. Well, they killed him for that. So you can be perfect and you're still going to get put to death. It doesn't mean that you're going to have a nice rosy life. This place is a pretty messed up place. And you have to kind of decide, do you believe in even good and evil? Do you believe in morality? Do you believe in anything beyond yourself? Do you believe in a higher calling? Do you believe in something bigger than you that you can invest your life and your time in? And then if you get to that point where you decide, okay, I feel like there's something maybe bigger. I feel like there's something maybe out there. I feel like maybe there's a calling, something that I could feel passionate about when I do it, where I don't, I'm not perfect, but I don't completely feel like a hypocrite. And I feel like I'm going down a path where maybe even I'm helping people. Well, then you ever get to a point where you want to ask about, the relationship question, anybody that comes into your life at that point now has to not get in the way of that. And talk about a narrow margin. I don't even know. I mean, like a lot of the guys that, even some of the women that come on there, they're like, we just feel like there's no hope for relationships. And I'm like, I want to tell you that it's better, but I'm lying and I can't, that's not going to help you. You're here to hear the truth. It
Well, hey,
is, it's a major mess out there. Well,
well, before we wrap up, I got done doing an interview with this guy, Raymond, and it seems to me he's the same age as me. He seems to put a lot of stock in being validated by women, and I never taken that approach throughout my entire life because I learned at a young age women are nuts and being validated by women and who you stick your dick into. I understand that's important, and she's giving up the goods to you and stuff, but that's not what's important because she could give it up to a psychopath, a mass murderer. Does that make
know.
you on the same level as that person? So I like to say that you are who you sleep with. If that person is going around fucking around a bunch of other guys, if she's has four baby daddies and has a lot of emotional baggage, what does that say about you? You see what I'm saying? So
Oh yeah.
I just want to know because you're a little bit older than me. You've been through the gambit for sure. What do you have to say to guys that are seeking their validation through the opposite sex?
Oh yeah. Well, my personal take on that, to be blunt, is that's a dead end road. In the
Mm-hmm.
sense that you have to find a way to define yourself, your character, and build yourself in a way that is not tied to that, to where you're seeking that validation. It's really no different than the emptiness that women are going to find getting validation online. They love to trade in that currency as much as they possibly can, but inevitably that's a dead end. Inevitably that's a dead end. Like they don't stop and think about, and I'm using them as an example for this in comparison to the guys, but they don't stop and think about, okay, if they're getting online validation, 99% of those guys are guys they're never going to want to be with, but it's inflating them and giving a false sense of their self-worth. You want to build your self-worth, especially as a man, in my opinion, on uh, doing everything from building a business to focusing on interests and other things that you want to pursue that will help you grow. But one of the toughest things is the solitude. Solitude and being able to sit with yourself is the biggest thing. You want to get your sense of who you are from that, because if you're getting it from validation of women paying attention to you, that's flippant. That's going to come and go. And they're going to give you validation of paying attention to you, but then they're going to turn around and give it to another guy. And then they're going
Right.
to turn around and give it to another guy. And it's weird that women can sense that too. It's almost like a sense of, if you don't learn to curb that, it gives a sense of desperation off. And it's almost like wearing a bad cologne that they can smell on you a mile away. Eventually it makes you desperate because you want to get that so you can feel validated, and you need to have something outside of that to where that's not your center of who you are as yourself. If you have something outside of that, then ironically enough, even though you don't want it to be this way, it makes it incredibly attractive to women because they look at that and they're like, oh, now I have to have that because he doesn't care what I think about him. And that's true. I know it's the oddest thing.
Yeah.
When you want them to do that, they don't want it. When you don't, absolutely they want it now, but they find that attractive because they're picking up on the sense of purpose that's in your life. But it's not something that can ever be faked. You have to genuinely get to a point where you're cool with that solitude. You have that sense of purpose. It's not going to get shaken by somebody that comes along, and you know who you are to a certain degree. And it offers you a lot more opportunity, but it also doesn't leave you in that vulnerable spot of worrying about whether or not they're ever going to notice you or give you any validation because you just don't care. I mean, like I think I tried to describe it in one of the videos where sort of like if you encounter a woman and you can give her a compliment and walk away and not care whether or not she took note of it or not, I guarantee to you she absolutely will. She's going to remember that because you didn't care whether she responded or complimented you back or even thought about it beyond a certain point. You just don't care. And that's the part that really, really catches them, but it has to be real. Like you can't fake that sort of charisma. You have to just spiritually and psychologically and emotionally already have arrived there. That's something that can never, ever be gamed or faked. It's just a development of guys' character. And I try to encourage guys to do that all the way across the board. Learn how to be okay alone and in solitude and with yourself, and it'll change everything. Like, I mean, even how people deal with you with work and business, I feel like it changes all of that because people sense that about you. There's just a quiet confidence. You're not worried whether they like you, and it kind of makes them sort of at ease and almost kind of looking at you mysteriously, like, why doesn't this person care about that? And they seem like they're genuine and they're not kissing up to anybody and they're not worried about whether they're validated or liked by anybody. And that genuineness just carries over into a lot of areas. It just seems that way to me anyway. So yeah, that was what I would say to any guy like that. Go down that road. Practice being alone. Practice cultivating interests and anything that you can where you spend time with yourself and getting to know yourself. You won't care about validation from women or whether they notice or approach you, and it will make you at the same time, ironically enough, all the more attractive, I think.
Well, listen, man, I know you got to run. I would love to do this again. We'll do a part two sometime soon. Absolute
Sure.
pleasure. I'll be sure to send you a link when I post it. Steve, thanks so much. Enjoy your evening. Let's keep in touch, all right?
Absolutely. Thank you, Nick, for having me on.
100%. Take care.
All right. Bye-bye.
Peace.
Hello again to all subscribers and listeners of this channel. This is part 2 of what will now be a 3-part series entitled The Cost of Women. In this series, we'll talk about the cost for men and what it costs to be with a woman in the modern age. In this video will be even more examples of how women are too expensive to deal with in the modern age, and how dealing with a wife in this modern age could absolutely destroy a man. Note, in the first video, we started this 3-part series with 3 scenarios. This video will continue with 4 more scenarios. And the final video will be a summation of my observations of what it means to spend money on women in the modern society. So let us begin. So, for some basics, there's a younger guy. He's about 29, 30-ish, and he's planning on getting married. He's a construction worker. And he started working in this unionized construction company about a year ago, so when he was like 29 or so. He goes through all the training. He goes through all the testing, everything that he needs to do. He gets hired. He starts the job at about $25 an hour. And remember, this is unionized. So because of that, he actually starts at $25 an hour because this is a very high stress job that only a few people can do. He's one of those few people. So, he's working the 8 hours a day, and every so often when their company asks him, they ask him to work overtime. So on a few days, he might be working 10 to 12 hours at his job, making his $25 an hour. Paying union dues, state taxes, government taxes, fees, fines, and any other manner of other expenses as a productive male adult human being. So, starting at about 30 years old or so, simple math. $25 for 8 hours a day, that's $200 a day. That's roughly around $1,000 a week, about $4,000 a month. And finally, we're looking at about $48,000 to about $52,000 a year. Depends on how you look at it, whether you go by the monthly rate or you multiply the weeks of the year by his weekly earnings. It's going to be around that. So to make it simple, we'll just go with $50,000 and we'll just sit with that to make it simpler and easier math as we go along. So to make it easy, we're going at the 50,000, and then we look at for 1 year with all his expenses, his fees, his taxes, and union dues. That's going to take away about 20% of his income. So now, as far as take-home income, that's about $40,000. So keep this number in mind. Scenario 4. His big wedding day. When our construction worker guy is getting married, he is shelling out a crap load of money for one major event that could end whenever his wife wants it to end. I shall elaborate. Weddings consist of a gown, a tuxedo, a cake, members of both the bride and the groom's family, their friends, extended family, catering, decorations, rehearsals, rings, pre-wedding parties, and a whole host of other things that have to be done for a wedding. Because it just has to be done. From what I've researched, this is going to run an average of about $30,000 for just this one wedding. So if the guy and the woman have been together for about 1.5 years, well, I should say they actually been together for a couple years. 1.5 years. They were engaged for about 6 months. And now we're getting close to the wedding day. And on average, if I looked at this right, the split for the cost of the wedding is going to be split down the middle, relatively. So, automatically, he and his family are already putting in about $15,000 in order to have this wedding. So let's do some simple math. He's making $25 an hour at his construction job that he's been at for about a year or so. $25 an hour at the first year construction job. This wedding is already costing him and his family around 600 hours at his job, or 75 work days, or that translates to about 15 weeks of work, or about 3.75 months of work day time that is actually going to be translated to the money he's now spending to cover half of the expenses at this wedding. Understand that. 3.75 months spent on the very beginning of something that could end at the woman's whim, at the wife's whim, whenever she feels like it. Let that sink in. Now again, this is only the beginning of the marriage. They've only been together for about 2 years and they're just now getting married. It's only the wedding, and the marriage can end at any moment because of infidelity or divorce or any other problem that's usually going to come from the woman's choice. And once divorced, you, the man, can be annihilated. I will elaborate on this later. Questions. Question for the man. Do you really want to go down this road? If the answer is yes, then it's probably too late for you already. You have now entered the dangerous ground. You have now walked into a relatively dangerous realm. Question to the woman. Do you value the marriage and the man, the male human being, the masculine homo sapien that you got married to? Or do you only care about the superficiality and the excitement of the overexpensive and flashy giant wedding? Scenario 5. The couple's now moving in together. Now, they lived in a small flat right after the wedding. Or actually, no, they lived in the small flat a little bit before and right after the wedding. So they've been together in that place for what we'll say almost 3 years. And that particular house was worth only about $40,000 or so. They lived much further south where it's a lot cheaper. But now they're going to move. So now it's a year later. and they decide to upgrade. Now, our construction guy has actually moved up in the company really well. In only a year, he's gone from $50,000 up to $80,000 yearly salary. So now he's making $30,000 more than he was before you take out taxes and all the other stuff. So when they both move, it's in the new place together. The man decides that for their safety and her comfort, they both need a big house in a splendid neighborhood. And obviously everyone wants to be safe, so when they go looking around for a place, she joins in a lot of discussions about this and convinces the husband that they need to get a house in the affluent neighborhood. This house is gargantuan, and there's a whole bunch of other things going on in this house that I can't even put in this list, but this house is gargantuan, and it's built in a place where they have higher property taxes and very high property values. So let's break it down. The house has 5 bedrooms. It's 2 stories. It has a dining room, a living room, a huge kitchen, a guest room. It has 3 bathrooms, a 2-car garage connected to the house, a long driveway. It has a swimming pool, and a backyard and a front yard. They're like maybe almost like half an acre or something like that. And it's decorated with flowers and exotic plants. Because of these amenities and the location of the house, it's going to be around $300,000 for the house. So mortgage is about $2,000 a month, plus the property tax of 1.5% annually. So property taxes are a percent of the house's total value, and the tax, whatever that amount is paid annually. And then that is split up into 12 different parts because you're going to pay a portion of that every single month. So the house's yearly property tax is about $4,500. You split that into the monthly mortgage, and that comes out to a monthly payment of $2,375 a month. Now, oh boy, it's amazing that there's actually relationships like this. But let me go on. So now the new wife, on top of getting this giant house that's pretty expensive, she also wants brand new furniture. She wants to increase the landscaping and add more landscaping, and wants to add something pretty to all the rooms, especially the guest room and the master bedroom. This comes out to another $5,000 to $10,000 easily. So now for some math. Remember, our construction guy went from making $50,000 a year when he first started to a little more than a year later, he's now increased to $80,000. And this can't happen, especially if you're in a union and you're a really good worker and really show that you're actually valuable to them. This pay increase can happen. It actually does happen quite a bit in certain industries. So you don't believe me? Look it up. I might put links in the description. But let's go to the math. All right. So now he's making about $40 an hour. That equals about $320 a day. That comes out to about $1,600 a week, or about $6,400 a month. That's roughly $77,000 a year. Or if you do the $16,000 a week times 52 weeks, that comes out to about $83,000 a year. So to make it easy, we're going to put it at an even spot of about $80,000. Now, we take out the taxes, we take out the fees, union dues, etc. That brings everything down by about 25%. So now he's down to about $60,000 as take-home income every year. So our construction guy would have to save up about half of his take-home income, and that's a big if. And if he did that, it would take him a little more than a decade to pay off his house. This house that the wife wanted. And that's including a lot of ifs. Most of them probably would never happen. But if his income stayed the same, if taxes stayed the same, it didn't increase, if the house's value stayed the same, if he didn't buy a whole bunch of other things that he didn't need, and if they didn't need to move anywhere else in that 10 or so year span, then he probably could pay this off in about a decade, maybe even less. It depends. And by the way, if my math is off anytime in this video, go ahead and let me know in the comment section, because There's a lot of mathematics that went into this, so I might have slipped up somewhere. Again, if I made any mistake, let me know. But back to it. It also takes him almost 2 weeks to earn the money for the mortgage payments, and it takes about 1 day's worth of work to pay the monthly property tax rate. And it takes him roughly 1.5 to 2 months of work to earn the money that the wife, the missus, will spend on redecorating, on furniture, on clothes, and on the landscaping. So yeah, she really wants her worthless stuff, doesn't she?
It's just our couch! This isn't life! This is just stuff. And it's become more important to you than living. Well, honey, that's just nuts.
Question for the man. So, yeah. How are those dreams and big plans of yours coming along? You know, the ones that cannot happen now because so much of your value is being spent on the missus' demands? Just curious. Question for the woman. So all this stuff in this building, a building which ultimately just provides shelter and warmth, but apparently for you it does more than that. All this stuff that costs thousands of dollars of somebody else's money, all this material you and your husband went out and bought, this stuff made you that much happier because... Scenario 6. The kids. And 10 years later. So our construction guy is 41 years old now. He's making well over $100,000 a year. And has 2 kids. A 7-year-old and a 3-year-old. The missus wants the kids to go to a private school only. The older child has already been enrolled for about 2 years. The younger child is going to be there in the next 2 years. The wife also wants to work part-time so she can have some of her own money, her own spending money. But because of this, she needs a nanny and or a daycare to watch over the kids while she's at her quote-unquote job. I'll get to that later. Why does she do this? Because she wants even more fun stuff to play with. She gets bored staying inside all day with the kids who are distracted by a whole bunch of electronics and stuff. So they don't really actually interact with each other that well. And she doesn't want to keep bothering the husband for more money to buy more useless junk. And she also wants to socialize with the other affluent wives in the neighborhood. So the setup goes like this. She gets a part-time job at some silly artsy studio in the neighborhood. Spends the money on herself. Meanwhile, her husband spends his money on the children's school that she insisted on because public schools suck. So that's $1,000 a year to be enrolled. The oldest child has been there for 2 years, like I said. He buys the kids clothes, shoes, toys, electronics, etc. A whole bunch of things to keep them distracted. That's another $1,000 for each child every year. Again, they have 2 children. He pays for the nanny and or for the daycare for about 2 years, and he's going to keep them for another 2 years. So that's 4 years total. And both of these were the wife's choices, of course, at about $60 a day or so, and he has 2 more years to go doing this. So that's 4 years total. He buys all the tools and the machinery to keep up the house's landscaping, and sometimes pays people to do the landscaping for him because he doesn't have the time because he's at his job all day. And again, this is the landscaping that the wife wanted. God, this dude is weak. So let's just say that that's up to about $10,000 for everything when it comes to the landscaping, when it comes to the tools and everything. And then it's about $1,200 a year to maintain the landscaping. And he pays a couple other people to clean the pool that she likes that he bought with the house. So let's just say that's another $1,000 a year. And she contributes pretty much nothing to these expenses. When she gets her paycheck, she spends it on herself. She will occasionally spend it on the kids, give them a little treat every so often. Or she'll spend it on something to do with her girlfriends when they go on their, I guess, play dates or whatever. Whatever you want to call them. Now the math. He's earning about $144,000 a year or so. And has been earning that much for the past couple years in this last decade. So, and I'm going to calculate what he's been earning on the different scales. And I'm also going to calculate what the wife has been earning, just so you get an idea. So, this translates to roughly $75 an hour, which is huge. That is equal to $600 a day. And that's regular day. That's not overtime. That's just an 8-hour day. That translates to about $3,000 a week or about $12,000 a month. That's roughly $144,000 a year if you go by the monthly scale and add in all the holidays and all that stuff. Or if you go by the weekly, multiply by the weekly scale, that comes out to about $156,000. But then you got to calculate some expenses, some sick days, some vacations or whatever, other stuff that's going on. Again, to keep it simple and to keep it simple math, we're going to go at $150,000. He's making an average of about $150,000 for the last 3 or 4 years or so. Now, again, he's paying union dues, he's paying taxes, he's paying fees, he's paying all this other money because he's making more money. So now his take-home income is somewhere around $105,000 a year. And this is insane and seems increasingly unfair to such a good worker. But that's how our economy is working. We're squeezing the people who are getting more productive. Whatever. Now, calculating the wife's new job and her income. Now, the wife's new job is some type of Pilates yoga teacher's assistant thingy. I don't know what it is, but she's in a studio. And she's getting paid $15 an hour for 4 hours a day. So that's $60 a day to sit and stretch in tight, shapely clothes with a whole bunch of other bored, lazy, affluent housewives. So that comes out to about $300 a week or $1,200 a month or about $14,400 a year, which is very low income. As in, that's so low that she might not pay much in taxes, and she might not even pay taxes at all, depending on what's going on and what state she lives in. But it is enough to allow her to buy more stupid stuff that isn't very useful. Son of a bitch. So, as far as what the husband has been spending in this past decade, and this this is just going to be another breakdown. So, $2,000 were spent on the private school total, plus the $10,000 spent on the toys. Oh yeah, when I say $2,000 spent on the private school, that's for the oldest child who's already been to school for the past 2 years. Add that to the $10,000 spent on the toys and games. Add that to the money spent on the clothes on both kids every year. So now you add that to the $60,000 spent on the nanny and the daycare. Add that to the $22,000 spent on the landscaping total. Add that to the $10,000 spent on the pool maintenance. Add that to the monthly mortgage on the house for the past decade. And by the way, all these numbers are what he spent on these things so far. So he's been buying these things every year for the past couple of years. This is what he's been spending his money on so far up to this point. And then the property taxes recently in the state that he lives in, they went up to 1.75% 5 years ago from the 1.5% that they used to be. So now add into his expenses for the past decade, add the $142,500 from the first 5 years of paying the mortgage, and then add the $146,250 from the most recent 5 years of paying the mortgage. And no, he has not fully paid off the house. He hasn't paid it off completely yet. Mostly because he spent so much of his money on other things to satisfy the wife. Yeah, you got that right. He made more money and still didn't pay off the house. So altogether, our guy has spent almost $400,000 on a family following the wife's demands. He's paid roughly 30% in taxes, fees, and union dues and other expenses just because of his job and because of his income bracket. So after spending a decade earning and I did the math on this, he has officially earned just under $1.5 million. Again, if you don't believe me, if you think I did the math wrong, go ahead and do the math yourself and check it yourself, and you'll see what I'm talking about. He has officially earned almost $1.5 million over this past decade. 30% goes to taxes and fees and dues, and then another 28% was spent on the wife, the house, the kids, the property value, the taxes on the house and everything that they buy, and maintenance and upkeep of the house. So you're looking at a total of 58% of his income is being spent on so many other things, and it's not being spent on him. And almost every decision as to how his money was spent was made by the wife. Let me say that again. Almost every decision as to how his money that he earned on his own, fair and square, that money was being spent based off the wife's demands, based off the wife's decisions that he just kind of bowed down to almost every time. So after all that, he's left with just a little under $450,000 or so to spend on himself. And that comes out to, if I'm doing my math right, almost a little more than $30,000 a year or so, something like that, of spending money left to himself. And guys, I need you to think about this very carefully. And by the way, I didn't calculate the utilities like gas, water, and electricity. I didn't calculate the car payments either. Remember, the 2-car garage? Yeah, they actually do own 2 cars too. So there's other expenses that we're not even going to get into because this video will go on way too long and we'll get into the minutia. So quite honestly, we're looking at maybe less than $400,000 for himself. And again, we look at all those other expenses, much of which his wife still convinces him to spend on those expenses a certain way. She still convinces him to spend money on vacations and traveling to places that almost exclusively she wants to go to. So again, even that money is not really all his, not yet. Not until you go well below $400,000. So he's got 300 and something thousand after 10 years of making literally $1.5 million. So ultimately, this man, for the past decade, has spent just about $1.1 million on his kids, on his wife, on her demands, and another chunk he's given to the government. And it's kept under $400,000 for himself. Really, really let that sink in. Imagine earning legitimately $1.5 million and you can spend maybe $300 and something to $400,000 on yourself. Everything else is being given to everybody else. Almost $1 million is being given to everybody else because they demand it from you. And it actually seems like it would make mathematically more sense to earn less money, be in a lower tax bracket, not get married, and keep more of your earnings. But I'll get to that later. So let's continue. And remember, she and her little yoga class thingy, whatever that she does with all the other parasites, affluent housewives, that income did not really contribute to any of the expenses of how they live or where they live. And she almost can't really pay taxes because she's making so little. That's her spending money for what she wants to play with and her money only. No questions need to be asked here. The mathematics speak for itself. And again, if I'm off on any of that, go ahead and let me know in the comment section. I totally accept and I'm totally okay with anyone making corrections if I made any mistakes anywhere. Scenario 7. And I apologize if this got long-winded, but we gotta break this down very slowly, so stay with me and be patient. But we're on to scenario 7, and this is the big one. Our lovely couple, the yoga instructor assistant and the construction worker, who have been together for a little more than a decade, this lovely marriage is coming to an end. They are getting a divorce. One day, the wife invites the husband into the dining room to sit down and talk. She has a distressed yet calm look on her face. They've been together for more than a decade. He raised 2 children with her, bought them a large house in a nice neighborhood, afforded a nanny so that way they could both work, put the 2 children into private schools, never hit her, never cheated on her, took her out on some of his vacations. They had their arguments and disagreements from time to time, but he never crossed that line. He never got violent with her, never hit her, did anything like that. He stayed loyal and productive at his construction job, moved up the ladder, and worked his way up to earning pretty close to $200,000 a year. And was considered one of the best employees at the job based on what other people at his construction job said about him. So he has a reputation for what he did there in that decade plus time of working there. He got them a few cars, a swimming pool. He paid for the landscaping and so many other things to try and bring as high quality of life to his family as he possibly could. He has literally spent almost, or even maybe more than, $1 million over the past decade on everyone that he cares about, along with paying his dues and his taxes to the government on time, every time, without fail. And what does this woman do after all her husband's hard work and effort? She decides to divorce. Why does she divorce? Because she's not happy. We don't know why she's not happy. She's just not happy. After much arguing, heartache, and even a threat to call police, she eventually does leave the home. But in the next few weeks, she comes back, bringing in lawyers, and the husband's forced to hire his own lawyers. And the divorce, it commences. Because, oh dear, the missus isn't happy. So I just want to get this out of the way before I continue with this little story. They own 2 cars. They have 2 kids. They have a big house that's almost completely paid off. He's close to paying it off, which is insane considering his income almost quadrupled, but whatever. It's a decent sized estate, pool, lots of jewelry, souvenirs from vacations, thousands of dollars worth of fancy stuff. And according to the lawyers, according to the judge, and according to the family court, and after about 1.5 years of divorce proceedings, the whole family court and everybody involved is deciding that the wife, who had been mostly unemployed until she got a quote-unquote job that paid so little that she almost couldn't be taxed on her very meager income, and she contributed almost nothing to the everyday expenses of the family at all whatsoever. Here's what happens after the family courts made their decisions about their divorce. A, she gets the house. B, she gets sole custody of both children. C, she gets one of the cars, and this car is worth about $50,000. D, she gets alimony, and the alimony she's getting is going to be about 20% of his current yearly income. E, she also is going to get child support, which doesn't make sense. Why would you get child support and alimony? But that's what they decide. And that's going to be about 10% of his current yearly income. F, she will also get 50% of all the money that he's earned after taxes were paid ever since they got married. So when you look at his take-home income after all expenses were taken care of, she's going to get half of that. So that's basically half of the $400,000 that he had left over. Yeah, I said that correctly. Now some math. And the numbers are in the thousands. So we got 350,000 plus 50,000, and yeah, his current income is almost $200,000 a year. So we got 350,000 plus 50,000, and yeah, we also got the 40,000 for the alimony. We got the 20,000 for the child support. Jesus Christ. And yeah, he saved almost $500,000 over that slightly more than a decade of employment. So it's like between $400,000 and $500,000 that he saved up. And then we got to add in the $250,000. And if I do my math right, she's going to walk home after this divorce with about $710,000. If I'm doing my math right, she gets roughly $700,000 just for being married to a successful moving up the ladder construction worker and staying married to him for a little more than a decade. Again, if I do the math wrong, let me know. But this is insane. Now, we're going to continue. $250,000 she gets from his savings. So, I take the best. Like $200,000 to $250,000, give or take, that she gets from his savings that he had saved up. He had $400,000 she has $400,000 that she gets in the form of his car and his house. And she gets about $60,000 a year from him in child support and alimony combined together. The child support will last another 13 years or so, and the alimony will last until one of them dies, if I remember correctly, how they do these things. Oh, one more thing. I could be wrong about this, but yeah, you might have to do some research and let me know. I wasn't able to find this. I don't know why, but the alimony and the child support that she's getting from his yearly income going into the future, that is being taken from the gross income, I think, in this particular scenario. So he hasn't paid taxes or dues or anything yet. So if he's making $200,000, the alimony and child support are a percentage of the $200,000. It's not a percentage of the money he has after you paying taxes. It's a percentage of the money he has before paying taxes and fees and all the other stuff. So, again, if I'm doing my math right, he goes home every year with almost the same amount of money that he's forced to give her. And that's about $60,000 a year. And if that number sounds small, consider that he's also missing days of work from going to court. He's paying lawyer fees. He might need to pay her and his lawyer. On top of all that, other fees he's been paying for that decade, like the car maintenance, the landscaping, the house maintenance, gas, electricity, water, etc. So this man might literally be walking home without his kids, without one of his cars, without his house, without his pride, without his dignity, and without his money. And the money he earned fair and square. Didn't do anything dirty, didn't do anything crazy. He earned the money doing his construction job that he really liked. Moved up the ladder like he's supposed to. And he's going through this all because he gave his power away to a woman. He got married. Yep, that's it. She got married, spread her legs, popped out a few kids, waited 1 decade, And boom, she gets 60 grand a year, guaranteed. And she gets this after a divorce. She never really had to work and never does have to work in the future. Because she carried this out and it worked out for her perfectly. He, on the other hand, he worked hard, stayed consistent, provided, protected, stayed loyal to his wife and his company, paid his taxes, paid his dues, missed like maybe a couple of weeks worth of work over the course of 10 years, which is insane, but he was able to pull that off. He accumulated more than $1 million worth of earnings, and now is being forcefully pissed away by a savage woman and a greedy government that will cage him if he doesn't comply with their demands. Perfect score for her, absolutely appalling for him. And again, I keep saying this, but again, I know there's going to be people who are really good at math, and I might even put like copies of this in the description in a written form so that way you can see it, because it get kind of confusing from time to time. But if there's anything wrong or inconsistent with my mathematics, go ahead and let me know. But yeah, that's what's going on in this situation. And this is indeed an incredibly ugly situation that unfortunately millions of dudes have been going through for the past couple of decades. But that's how it goes. Some things to consider. I want you to think hard and deep about these things. These are very important things that you need to keep in mind when you're looking at scenarios like this. 1. Women enjoy weddings more than men, it seems. 2. Notice how the man is doing everything to please and satisfy the woman. AKA, you spoil her, you blue-pilled idiots. 3. Interesting that our construction worker is smart enough, skilled enough, strong enough, and disciplined enough to get and stay in a construction job for more than a decade. And I've done some research. Construction jobs are one of the hardest jobs to get and stay into for a long time. So you are way above average as a human being if you can get the construction job, one of these unionized jobs, and you can stay there the long term, because their standards are very high when it comes to what they want their employees to do. So again, lots of strength, lots of intelligence, lots of skill, lots of discipline goes into keeping that job for an extended period of time like he did. Yet, he doesn't seem to be able to deal with his wife in a way that makes more sense. As in, he never seems to use his mathematics, his sound reasoning, his logic, or put a firm foot down when it comes to his wife's demands. He's so strong, yet so weak at the same time. So smart, yet so stupid. So disciplined when it comes to doing his job, yet so weak-willed when it comes to dealing with his own wife. Our poor, pathetic, blue-pill construction worker friend here. If only he could have been awakened a long time ago. Number 4. She's being treated like royalty. Disgusting, demanding, ugly, dirty-souled royalty. She's being treated like the children. Like a gigantic child. Yeah, like a very large child. Like a little, spoiled little brat, just a bit bigger. Number 5. She is spoiled like a child, whines like a brat, but like a tyrant has the ability to financially obliterate her own husband. And after he did everything like a good husband was supposed to do, or at least he did what the female center's social order told him to do, and she runs around unhappy and demanding like the little gluttonous, soulless, weak-minded, yet masterfully manipulative parasite that she really is. Number 6. Everything that has happened, is happening, or will happen in a dead marriage like this is irreversible. everything good that the man did and everything horrible that the woman did, they can't really be reversed once they've been done. It cannot be changed once it is set in motion. Weak men and selfish women equals a horrific combination. Weak men and selfish women equals a horrific combination. Number 7. You want to destroy a man's soul? Here's how you do it. You make absolutely sure you destroy or take away the fruits of a man's labors. You annihilate all the things that he's earned fair and square. You wipe away and you disconnect him from his life's work and the people he cares about. That is the way to destroy a man's soul. Women can be good soul killers and very efficient soul destroyers. The consumers of spirit are among us. Again, as stated in the beginning of this video, this is only part 2 of a 3-part series. Part 3 will be up in about a month, and that will be the final chapter in this series, where we delve into the cost of women. Part 3 will be a recap of the man's evolution throughout this pain-filled experience. It will also break down how much was spent altogether in these different situations combined. Because the first 3 scenarios and last 4 scenarios, they were separated. So I'm going to combine them together in this third and final video. The third and final video will also talk about alternative lifestyles that our construction worker could have gone to instead of going this route. What he could have done with his wealth. And part 3 will finally break down why women can never ever again say, at least not to me and other men like me, where are all the good men? How come there's no good men? You all cannot say that anymore. And in part 3, I will break that down. So please stay tuned. That's all for now. Stay tuned for part 3 of the series. The Cost of Women Final will be the title of that video. And The Cost of Women Final will be the last video in the series. Please like, subscribe, share, and donate to support this channel. You have a nice day. I'm out. Peace. With her talons, let her eat cake.